The process for making slideshows remains the same, no matter what version of this software we use. We generally start by copying all of the images, video clips, music, and any other content we expect to use into one folder. Give that folder the same name you intend to give to your presentation. With PTE AV Studio open, I'm going to set up a new project by going to File, New. In the project name, I'm going to give that exactly the same name as the folder we've just created. And the aspect ratio here of 16:9, perfect for our needs. We'll click OK to that. From the file tree on the left-hand side, we now need to locate that folder. I've placed it on the desktop for ease of use. When we open that folder, we see the entire content displayed to us in an area called the file list. Now you can think of this as your storeroom. We don't need to use everything in our file list, and we can always add more content later if we need to. To start, we need to select content from the file list, our storeroom, and drag them down into the slide list. Now we can do this in the order we want the content displayed, one image or video at a time, and we can also drag them back into the file list too, if we change our mind or just want to choose something different. On this occasion, I'm going to select all of the content in one go. If I select one and then hit Ctrl A, the universal keystroke for select all, I can drag all of the content down into the slide list. Now the project options window that's just opened here, it's just reminding us that one of the files we've dragged down is a sound file. We just need to click OK here. And while we won't see this sound file shown to us in the slide list, we'll see it shortly in the timeline. Now we need to save a project file that remembers everything we've done so far. To do that, we go to File, Save As, locate the desktop in my case, and there's my folder. Open the folder because that's where we want the project files to be located. And down here you'll notice it's already picked up the correct name. It's got that name from when we did that file new a few moments ago. So let's click Save here. So everything we've done so far is now saved. We could close down PTE, come back another day to exactly this position. The running order of the content we've chosen can be changed at any time. For example, I could select this image and drag it into that position. And I can do the same with video clips too. Or I could do this in full screen mode from this little icon down at the bottom right corner. When this screen opens up, we have the same opportunities we had a few moments ago. We can click drag and drop any of our content into the running order we want to use, and then hit the little icon again, and they'll be back into the slide list in the order that we've chosen. You should get into the practice of saving your project file quite often, especially after you've just made some significant change. And here's a tip. Each time you do this, add a number to the name you've given your slideshow. So for example, save as, I'll put my cursor right at the end and I'll call this 001. Now these project files are very small, so we can save as many as we wish. So if we add a number after every save, if we ever take the wrong tack, we can very easily go back to an earlier version. We can't do that if we overwrite the project file. We now have the opportunity to change the transition style between images and videos. We can do that globally for the entire show via the project options bottom left. If we go to the transitions, here you can see the dissolve is ticked by default. I can remove that tick and I can choose anything else to be applied to my entire show. The other way to do this, if we just want to do it for an individual slide, if we were happy for all of these to have a dissolve, but maybe this one we wanted something else, we can change that individual slide via this little icon or by the slide options bottom left. One click and we're into the same options that we saw in project options a few moments ago. The transition you choose, of course, is purely a creative choice. There's no rights or wrongs here. But for simplicity, I'm going to stay with the default fade over 2 seconds. My intended publication option is an MP4 HD video. One of the questions often asked is, do we need to crop or resize images to make a presentation? Well, in this case, the answer is no. But if you look along the slide list here, you can see that not all of my images nicely fit into the HD size of 1920 pixels by 1080. Let's fix that problem next by selecting the entire slide list with the universal shortcut key Ctrl-A. Then we need to go to Styles and Themes, Styles, Image, and choose Cover Screen. Now this is going to ensure that all the images nicely fill the HD video's 16:9 aspect ratio. Now let's turn our attention to blank slides. Something to fade up from at the start and something to fade down to at the end. Now we can do this by moving our cursor to the first slide in our sequence. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose to insert a blank slide. Alt-S is the shortcut key. If I move the scroll bar to the end of my sequence and click just behind that last slide and do the same thing, right click, insert a blank slide. Now, as we scroll back to the beginning of our slideshow, we may want to now consider the title of our slideshow. And here is where you can stretch your creative wings. There's such a lot of options available to us when it comes to text, but probably best to investigate those later. Let's create something simple, a simple title manually on a blank slide. Now this is where we need to investigate another screen. So selecting the blank that we created at the start, we need to go to the Objects and Animation screen. In this screen, as you can see, we can see the slide we've just chosen, in this case a blank. We can also see the sound shown for the first time, but what we need is at the top left. We need to select the text tool. Text appears in the center of the screen, and over on the right hand side we need to type the name of the slideshow we're making. We have all of the usual things you would expect with text. We have the font, the underline, the bold, the size, the color. What I want to do here is just keep this really quick and simple. I'm going to leave that just as it is. Let's go to the top right, close the Objects and Animation screen. There we can see exactly what we have. Now let's also assume that we'd like to have the title fading up from black itself and fading out to black as the music and the first image appears. Now that's going to be quick and easy to do. We've got the blank with the title selected, but if we right click, we can insert another blank. And if we go to the slide just after the title and do the same thing, and insert another blank, now we've got 3 blanks which will line up nicely in time in a moment or two. But there's the blank to start, the title appears, the title fades out, the music starts with the first image, which now fills the entire HD screen. And a great thing to do now would be to save our project file Tasmania, and maybe we can increase the 001 to 002. Now we've completed all of our preparation, we get to the fun part by moving down to the bottom right and selecting the timeline. In this window we see our images and video clips in much the same way, but here we can synchronize images and video to our music. We can slide them along the timeline, increase or decrease the transition length, and adjust slide duration. But first we need to set up that title because we've got 2 seconds between the blank, the title and the blank. That's going to need some adjustment, so let's do that first. I'm going to begin by going to the little grey bar here which signifies the 2-second transition time we have for all of the content at the moment. I'm going to click at the end and drag it back to 0 because we don't need it for the first blank. I know from some experience that I like my text coming up on screen after just about 1 second. Doesn't have to be exact, something like that. So this one, I'm going to pick up the little blue tag, drag that back to about 2 seconds. So we've got 2 seconds of black, then the title fades up. I also know from experience we're going to need no more than 3 seconds between seeing the title and having it fade off screen, and again I'll set this to something like a second. Let's drag this one back and we'll have it on screen, let's say just 2 or 3 seconds, including the transition on. Which means that the very first image, if I pick up the blue tab, needs to come on screen about that point. And of course what I want to do as well is line that up with the music. So I would be dragging the music to line up to that point. But because I want to do a little bit of a preview with you, I'm just going to move it a little bit further on so that when I slide my cursor back to the start here and press play, we can view this on the mini player and not see or hear the music, which is going to drown out my voice. So take a look at the title. I think you'll find it's going to look pretty nice. Certainly not on screen too long. So at this point we can stop the cursor and we can move the music back. Now we've got some decisions to make about the music because I'm making a demonstration here. I don't have a great number of images or video clips, but I have a piece of music which is 8 minutes and 50 seconds in length. It's massively too much for what I need here. But with PTE AV Studio, we do get the opportunity to make some decisions regarding how we're going to use this music. We could choose to use the start of the music and fade out when we're ready. But if the end of the music's important to use right at the end of our slideshow, then we can cut back the start and fade it in. I'm going to choose the first option here. We're going to use it from the start. When we've used up all of our images and our video clips, then we can fade the music out. Now the orange line you can see inside of the sound file is the volume line. To try to ensure that I can talk and we can hear the music at the same time, temporarily I'm going to click on that and I'm going to drop the volume of it quite low. Let's hope I've not taken it down too low. So to start to place my images and video against the timeline, what I tend to do is to pick up an image like this one, which is the next one we're going to use, and I move it a little bit away from where I'm working. Because I'm going to put my cursor back at the start and I'm going to press play. And I'm going to watch my title appear and the first image. Then I'm going to insert the images on the fly while listening to the music. So I'm going to try to get the images in the correct place. But if I miss it, I just stop what I'm doing and just drag that image a little bit one way or another. You'll get the idea in a very short time. So let me press play. And to insert the images, we can either use this little plus or the insert key on your keyboard. I'm going to use the insert key. There's our title, fading off. Now I'm going to stop at that point because you don't get a full feel for what I've just done here. I'm going to put my cursor back to that point and let me just adjust this a little bit, get slightly bigger image on screen, press play, and we'll just watch and listen and see how each of these images appears nicely along the soundtrack. Now I continued there, but I made a deliberate mistake here. I brought this image into play a little bit too late, but I was watching the little peak here of the music. So all I've got to do is drag it back a little bit. I would put my cursor just before it and I would have a little view and listen. That looks okay, and I would carry on from there. At some stage, of course, we will need to scroll and possibly make a bit more space by moving them to the right. But you can see how you can do this in stages, not forgetting to go to File, Save As, and we're going to save this in the same way as we was before. Let's make this version 4. Because I'm making now some significant changes. Now what I'm going to do now is carry on and finish this slideshow in exactly the same way I've just described here. I'm going to do the same thing with the videos too. Now as you can see here, I've come to the end of my images, but I've got a lot of music left. Now what I need to do to bring that music back to match the slides I'm using is first of all scroll to the end, quite a long way in this particular occasion. I'm going to put my cursor on the end of the WAV file and drag it back. Now it'll drag back quite a long way, but as soon as I see my images appear, I'll stop and drag it a little bit back to the right. I'm not changing any of the synchronization by doing this. I'm just adjusting the length. I've literally cut off quite a few minutes of this piece of music. So now I've got a bit of a decision to make. What do I want to do with the final blank? Well, I'd like it to fade out over a little bit longer time. So really, my sound has to be certainly out by that time or close to it, which means I've got to start fading my music out probably somewhere back here. Now this is variable, and again it's a creative choice that the author makes. But I'm going to put the cursor in that position. I'm going to put my cursor in that position, you can see I can create these little blue dots. These are audio key points, because I can now drag this one down. So I'm bringing the volume down gradually from that point to when the fade out is complete. I need to drag this back a little bit at the end to something like that. So let me give you a little preview from this point here. I'll place my cursor there. We'll press play and we're going to watch and listen. This time the sound is up at normal volume, so it may be a little loud. If it is, I'll adjust that when I put the video together. Now that didn't sound too bad, but there's quite a lot of adjustment we can do, personal choice, as I always say. Now once we save this again, using another number on our project file, then we can publish our show. And all we need to do is to go to the Publish Show, HD and 4K video. It's going to be published in the same folder that has the images and our project file. There's the correct size. I do want high quality, and from these options I want 60p. This ensures that all of the transitions are very smooth and sweet, and of course when we do come to add animation to our slideshow, that will be smooth also. You can see I'm up to Tasmania 5 here. So let me just show you what happens from this point. If I click OK, the process begins. It's not a lengthy process with a slideshow of just over 2 minutes in length, as you can see by the blue bar. But once it's complete, we've not only made our slideshow, but we've published it too. The green tick above indicates that the process has completed. The time taken was 2 minutes 37 seconds. I can show the location of this in Explorer, or I can just click the close button and I can view my MP4 full screen a little bit later. With the spinning round of the screen, what I've done is to close down PTE AV Studio Pro version, and I've opened up the standard version of exactly the same software, and I've opened up our project number 5, which was just before I dealt with the sound at the very end. So using the standard version, this is what we need to do. We need to scroll to the end exactly the same as we did before, quite a long way because we've got a huge piece of music. Click and drag back that sound file till we see the images. Then I can decide where it's actually going to stop. I think we'll have it about there. I need to just drag back the length of the slide duration of that last blank because that's a little bit long. Just past my sound a little bit should do it. And I'll drag out the transition. So far we've done exactly the same as we did in the professional version. But what we don't have here is that orange line, so we can't put audio points and then reduce the volume. The way we do it is by going to the project options, into the audio track, and over here we have the ability to fade out the music. On this occasion, I think I'll put 15 seconds in there and click OK. Now we don't see any change at the end of the waveform here, but if I put my cursor just here and press play, we can watch and listen and we can see and hear just how it works. And that sounds pretty good, and in fact 15 seconds in that fade out probably sounds a little bit sweeter. All we need to do in the standard version is exactly the same as the professional now. We can go to Publish, HD and 4K video, and we would publish this particular presentation in exactly the same way. Now, all we've done here is really to scratch the surface of what this software offers. But we do have more than enough in the 20 odd minutes we've spent in this video to create some really good presentations. I'll see you next time, but look out below for many of the related videos to the subject we've dealt with here.